Hello, my name is Arnd, and my talk is named Migration of Existing Code Bases into a LernaJS MonoRepo. And if you have any questions, then please drop them in Slido. So I have a second screen here. I can see your questions and we can discuss afterwards. Whew. So, who am I? Short introduction again. Hi, I'm Arnd. My Twitter handle is Arnd Issler. And yeah, the yellow thingy there is my logo when years ago I got hairs. Now they are gone and they still exist in my logo. But anyway, I'm a senior product engineer working at Sinnerschrader, an agency based in Hamburg. I'm part of the org team of the JS Unconf. Some of you may know the unconference, and yeah, this is by accident that I have the same shirt here. I often wear fancy shirts. I like tools, and therefore I'm highly interested in how to manage a monorepo. And this led me to a talk on the Enter.js last year, talking about migration of existing code bases into LernaJS monorepo. Because since 3 years, I work in a large TypeScript-based project, and we use React, GraphQL, Redux, other useful things, distributed over 14 internal node packages, 5 applications based on this infrastructure, which are released into the public. And today, I want to give a brief insight how we managed to migrate all these single projects, all these 14 ones, and migrate a single code base in a monorepo. Yes, and today is PottJS edition, so I overhauled the talk a little bit because when I held this talk on Enter.js, I had to help the talk in sorry, in German. But this I realized only 5 days ago when Madeleine asked me to if I want to have this talk on the PottJS. So I had 5 days to translate the whole talk to English. So we'll see how this works out. So you can ask questions in English or in German if you want. Yeah, so let's roll. Today's roadmap. What's on our plate? What's this talk about? So first we have a look on the difference between polyrepos and the monorepo, getting to use what is what, how to use it, and then we decide what's in the monorepo. We will get in touch a little bit with Lerna, which is a tool for handling monorepos and manage monorepos. We will have a look on a step-by-step checklist, and I will guide you through the overall process, how we managed to migrate all these 14 repositories to one monorepo. And at the end of the talk, I will give you just some links where you can have a look on maybe alternative technologies, because it might be that you don't need a monorepo. So if you have criticism, then talk to me directly. I have Twitter open here. I can reach out to you on Twitter, on Telegram, on whatever you want. So we can discuss afterwards. You can also send me an email at arndissler.net. And yeah, German and English is fine, as I already said. I used Google, Bing, and DeepL to translate this talk. So this speed up a lot. Things a lot for me. Yeah, so the DMs are open. You don't need to follow me. If you have any questions, feel free. Questions, yeah, maybe right after the talk or just now. So get in touch. Who's who? I need to switch off the heater here. Who's who? What is a polyrepo? Polyrepo means single repositories. Monorepo, yeah, everything in one single big repository, and a package is a single npm package. These are the nouns which I'm using across the talk, so you know what I'm talking about. Polyrepo versus monorepo, facts from random internet sources. So a polyrepo. What is it? A polyrepo is, as you already know, or if you know NPM packages, they are often one repo per package or one package per repo. So you always have the structure. There's a package.json, you have a node module folder. In the node module folders, there are some other packages located. And sorry, yeah, you have only one node module folder, which might change in the near future with the Yarn 2 or maybe with Dino. So you have all the dependencies located in one folder, and often a repository. And this is not necessary, but in companies, this is often the case that one repository is maintained by only one responsible team for maintaining this repository, fixing things, and so on. So polyrepo, the good parts. The responsibility is mostly clear, and you have all the freedom you have on your own code base. Move fast, break things. You don't know your users. Or often you don't know your users. You publish it on NPM or maybe a company internal registry. And users are not forced to update. It would be nice, and you could say, hey, I have a graceful degradation of features, and maybe this is deprecated. Please update. But you cannot force your users to update the repository or to a newer version of your package. Feature implementation is easy. Yeah, move fast, break things, don't care about stuff, because if you use Zemver and the major version number increased, then yeah, it's a breaking change, and all others feel free to update or maybe not. So the bad parts, depending on what was on vogue when a package was created or started, it has its own culture of code style, of test runners, libraries, frameworks, formatting, indentation, all this other stuff. And stable packages are that works flawlessly tend to be forgotten. So no one knows how release a pattern library that is used in a couple of crucial projects across a company. No one wants to maintain those forgotten projects, but they still exist, and they are undocumented maybe, and they are still in use. And as I already said, you have no control over your consumers. So this is also a bad thing, because every consumer is responsible for keeping up with new releases of your package. And in companies, it's often a political question when breaking changes are adopted or ignored. And this can lead, for example, to the need that multiple versions of your package needs to be maintained to fulfill the needs of your users. And this is frustrating for the responsible team, and this is time consuming for the developers, and this is not a very nice situation. So depending on the standing of some developers in the company, maybe it's also possible that a team is publishing feature after feature and regardless of breaking changes, and no other teams can keep up with them and need to cope with the results of these breaking changes. So often it comes into MonoRepo, which hopefully needs to solve all the problems. So what is it? Everything is in a single Git repository, and all the maintaining scripts and files are at root level. Can you see? Yeah, maybe my mouse. This is here. And you often have a subfolder where all the other packages, here package A and package B, are located, and this is often called packages. And in the best case scenario, you have only one node module folder, and this is at the root level, where all the dependencies from the whole MonoRepo are located, and they are only linked to the node module folders, maybe from the other packages. So for each package which is maintained within the MonoRepo, there's a separate package.json here in the package A folder, for example, there's package.json, and the package B folder, there's package.json. And this is still holding the dependencies of each package, which is containing the MonoRepo, and it's still holding run scripts, version number, configurations, and all this other stuff, because technically speaking, it's still a package. So you have, as I said, one repo, multiple packages. It's optimal when you have only one node module folder. Internal packages used within the MonoRepo are linked to each other. So if I go back here, if package A here uses package B, then package B links or is a link to package B here. So you don't need to pre-release stuff and put it to maybe an internal registry or link, run yarn link. So mostly, for example, Lerna or other tools are doing this for you. So external packages are often hoisted. Hoisted means it's pulled from the node module folders in the sub-packages and pulled to the node module folder, which is located at root level, and then linked to all the consumers. So the good parts. The good part is everything is visible. So the whole code base is visible for all consumers, for all users within the MonoRepo. This is great for transparency and to know how things are done and how everything works and is connected to each other. And the consequences of breaking changes are visible. So you see what consequences your changes are causing, and there must be one rule. There must be rules for the developers to, if you implement a breaking change, who's fixing this, and this has to be for every developer the same. But my best guess is you break it, you fix it. And this might be a political question when you have multiple projects with multiple stakeholders within the MonoRepo. Then maybe managers are forcing the developers to not fix the code for the other project, so they can see where they are and how to fix it. So versioning should be easy. Because hopefully the MonoRepo management tool is doing this for you, maybe with conventional commits. So it's derived from the commit history, which version is set at next when you publish anything. And yeah, master holds a runnable snapshot of the whole ecosystem. And I think this is a crucial point of a MonoRepo. That's why I've written it in bold. Because from my experience, this is the main advantage of a MonoRepo, that if you check out a specific commit of a MonoRepo, then this commit holds a running ecosystem from all your dependencies, from all your internal dependencies, and you can build it and rerun it again and again, and yeah, it's like a snapshot of all your applications you have in your MonoRepo. But there are also drawbacks for a MonoRepo. So the good thing is you can use the same toolchain for a MonoRepo as you're using for regular repos. So because it's technically still a Git repo, for example. But be aware that most of the tools are not made for the size of a MonoRepo, and they might behave a little bit different than you are getting used to, due to the sheer amount of data, like number of files or commits, which are handled in the MonoRepo, or maybe the amount of packages you're handling there. So for a good part is that you have transparency, you can see everything, but this is also a drawback because everything is visible to all the users of the MonoRepo. And this might be a problem for some companies who are have different access levels for developers, that maybe some developers are not allowed to see maybe the company internal code over there, and so in fact then a MonoRepo is not the solution for you. Yeah, and depending on the size and the architecture of the MonoRepo, it's not ensured that that builds or tests can run in parallel, and it always takes time. So you might run everything in a huge chain, which takes a lot of time to build through, test everything, publish maybe, and this might be also yeah, a negative point on your list for when you choose to MonoRepo. So let's see what's in the MonoRepo. Or the better question is, what's not in the MonoRepo? Yeah. Still a little bit laggy here. So what's not in the MonoRepo? So number one, credentials, of course. Credentials are not part of the MonoRepo. In fact, they are not part of any repo, hopefully. Take this not for granted that developers don't check in private keys or files with credential data. So this is number one, don't check in credentials. If you want to rewrite the history of a MonoRepo, good luck. So the second one is what's not in the MonoRepo are components that are shared with external consumers. So good approach is to exclude components or modules from the MonoRepo that are shared with others as a dependency. So maybe it has a loose coupling, like a website or public packages or documentation or stuff. So documentation for the application, maybe not the developer documentation, which maybe is a good practice to put it into the MonoRepo. So for example, if you have an authentication package that is shared with other packages outside of your MonoRepo, then please don't include the authentication package into your MonoRepo, except when this authentication package you have written and published is only used as the main artifact and the main outcome of the MonoRepo. So what's part of our MonoRepo depends from your company's and project culture and structure. So there are different MonoRepo types. For example, all packages that you are using to create a product, like the set authentication library, or maybe Gatsby or Babel, these have one product in the end, which you can use. Like you can use Gatsby, and the Gatsby MonoRepo contains all the plugins you can use in Gatsby, but you will not use a Gatsby plugin out of Gatsby. So you might want to do that, but it's not that easy. So maybe it's a good idea to keep it in the MonoRepo, and yeah, but if it's intended to be shared with others as a product, as a standalone product or a standalone package, then don't put it in the MonoRepo. This is causing a lot of trouble. Yes, and the other MonoRepo type is you have a company and you put everything, and by everything I mean everything. You put everything in the MonoRepo. This is a way how Facebook, how Google is doing it, and maybe you have read it in the news, which was a week or so ago, that the MonoRepo from Facebook is so big that they do hard disk snapshots and ship them instead of checking out the whole repo. So I get a question. Yeah, I will cover the question afterwards. I've seen it, whoever has written it. So LernaJS is the de facto standard for JavaScript-based MonoRepos, and there are a bunch of blog posts out there, and you can read about what Lerna is for when it comes to MonoRepo. So it covers the dependency management for you before NPM was and Yarn was able to do this. It manages all the run scripts. It can manage the versioning for you, and it can manage everything with deployments like pre-releases, publishing, and all this, and deriving the version number. So, management is, as I already said, packages within the MonoRepo are linked. So if you have two packages in your MonoRepo and package A is using package B, then package B is linked to package A. You don't have to use the Arnd link from the command line again, ever, because it's done automatically. And all other packages which are used in the separate packages within your MonoRepo are pulled to the root level and linked to the consumers. So you might, if this is the only thing which you're looking for, then you don't need Lerna for this because the Arnd workspaces behave exactly the same way. So nice thing is what Lerna does with run scripts. So if you type from the MonoRepo root on the command line, Lerna run rocket, which starts a rocket in all packages of the MonoRepo, if there is a run script which is called rocket. And if you say Lerna exec space x, then executes space x in all packages of the MonoRepo. This is regardless of any run script. So it's just execution simultaneously in all sub packages which are maintained by the MonoRepo. And you can only say in what specific packages you want to run a script. So you can use a globbing pattern for this, like Lerna run rocket scope with the scope parameter, and say, for example, you want to start the rocket in all component packages and use the star there to say it has to start with components minus, and then yeah, it will run the rocket there. The versioning is it's pretty easy. There are two types of versioning, which is independent. So all packages have a different independent version number and fixed. So all packages which are affected by a publish are getting the same version number. This is a standard, and if you don't want to enter the hell, then stick with the standard. I highly recommend this. So Lerna deployments are pretty easy. So Lerna is able to determine the version number, as already said, from the Git commit history with Zemver. So Lerna version conventional commits is deriving the number. If you say, hey, this is a feature, then this is a breaking change. If you say, hey, this is a fix, then Lerna is only raising the patch version or the minor version. And if you want to check which, or if you want to publish packages and only these which are affected, then from one commit to from one publish to another, then you can just run Lerna publish from Git, which is having a look at the Git history and checking which packages are changed from the last publish up to now. So these are the basics. If you're still interested in how to go to a MonoRepo, then let's roll. So I have a sip of water, because now comes to the checklist, which I promised. Migration of existing code base into LernaJS MonoRepo. This is the talk title. So let's roll. All the facts I'm providing are the hard learnings of migration process I was part of. And I already told you that we migrated 14 projects to a MonoRepo. These were more than 3 years of Git history, which is a lot of commits, namely more than 59,000 commits. We had a big bang migration. So on Friday, every developer closed their MacBook, and on Monday, they open the MacBook again, delete all the single repos, throw them away, check out the MonoRepo, and have everything in place, and everything is working, and all the huge code bases are migrated. So it took us 3 months of planning, 2 months of implementation until it works seamlessly. And the migration process itself were only 4 hours. So this was what I saw on my MacBook after the 4 hours. And then it's getting a little bit shaky with your hands. Do you really want to force push 59,832 commits? But yes. So I'm telling you what you need to do if you want to achieve some way the same. So here are the obstacles and risks associated with the migration process I experienced so far. By degree of controllability, so most of us are developers, so we know how to handle technology and we know how to deal with the tools. This might be very easy. A little bit harder is the planning of the timeline. But hey, we're developers. We know how to estimate, right? It's no clue. So very hard is developers and management to bring everyone on the same page and to make transparent what you're working on and make everyone to have a good feeling about the migration process and how this all works. It's rather impossible, but you need to try. So here's the checklist. So print out and check. Steps towards the MonoRepo with the timeline. So preparation, this you need to do month in advance, a month beforehand, to make a model of the target. How does a MonoRepo look like? And create the technical foundation. How do you want to work? So the technical foundation needs to be implemented weeks in advance. So how do you want to do the actual code migration? How do you want to implement the CI system? How do you want to bundle stuff? How do you want to release? How do you want to perform a dry run? Because this is crucial. And maybe repeat this again and again and again. And what you need to do continuously is keep all the teams in sync. So as well as the developers, as the POs, managers, whoever is interested, or maybe not. So preparation, month in advance. So just think about how the MonoRepo looks like. So how many developers you have which are working simultaneously on your code base. So is it 10? Is it 100? Is it more? So in our case, we were 60 developers, and you can imagine how much code is produced day by day. So every day you postpone the timeline, you need to migrate more code, and the more obstacles you have to, or the more problems you need to solve. And what are the benefits you expect from a MonoRepo? So do you only have read a blog post and say, okay, let's put everything in a MonoRepo because this is on vogue and this is the new stuff and we need to do that because everyone is doing this? So which problems needs to be solved? What brings you up to why do you want to go to the MonoRepo? And discuss openly with open-minded with all the devs and all the managers. So how does the workflow looks like? What maybe brings you up to do you want to go to a MonoRepo? Like you have a component library which you need to pre-release so other teams can use it or can use the next version in advance. And do you need to rebase constantly, or do you have so many dependencies which are changing? So what is the main cause? What needs to be addressed with doing a MonoRepo? And how do you release the packages? What is the versioning strategy? Is a versioning number? Is it is it maybe for the clients? So that the first release in 2020 is getting 20.1, and the second release is getting a 20.2 or so. Is it a sprechende version number? So is there a meaningful version number? How do you create bug fixes? Are you enforced to create bugs maybe, or to create bug fixes maybe within a given time frame? And how should all this covered within the MonoRepo? So you have to talk to every developer. So to every developer in your team and the other teams, go around and yeah, just listen. And my advice is to document all decisions, not only what you picked. So okay, we're choosing Lerna, we doing yarn, and we pick the Git repository, and we want to solve it with Webpack and all this. So maybe make a list of all the technology you have in mind, and document also why you haven't picked any of the others. And why you haven't picked it, because maybe you're running later in the process, you're running into problems and say, oh, this doesn't work out as expected, so we have to Google for new solutions. And you don't have to Google if you have a document where you have maybe decisions documented, what you can do next, because maybe the foundation has changed, where all your decisions are based on. So create a fact base, keep data, or track data, how long processes are running, how much RAM is consumed, collect all the data. So if you're on AWS, this is nearly a no-brainer, but keep the data somewhere so you can compare afterwards if you're walking in the right direction. So yeah, still preparation and target modeling. Do not underestimate these topics here, the clash of repo and team cultures, because if you have multiple teams and multiple projects which they are responsible for, then you have maybe a little bit other code styles, tabs versus spaces, code formatting. They have different linter rules, some using JavaScript, some using TypeScript. So this is sand in the gearbox for every project, and especially if you want to put everything into one melting pot, which is a MonoRepo. And the solution you choose must not be optimal for everyone, but at least you need a solid foundation. So instead of maybe discussing coding styles for hours, just use Prettier, and you have a common foundation to start from. And start early, maybe weeks or month before you start the migration process, so everyone is aware to adopt all these changes and acclimatize on these changes. So you have enough time for course corrections, but when the migration starts, you have to be in one place, and everything has to be formed yeah, uniquely, and enforce the same linter rules across all projects, and maybe you have a company rule for doing this or so. But this will mitigate the pain in the end a lot. So also clash of repo and team cultures is that you have different run styles of maintaining run scripts. So normalize, unify the run scripts is often point where the people are picky with. Some wants to name them steps compile instead of build, and some say deploy instead of bundle, and you need to make it unique across all projects and way in advance before starting the migration, so everyone is getting used to the workflow changes you're implementing here. So you need a common solution, and so that each project has a similar look and feel for the developers from the command line perspective. Sorry. So the main goal is to normalize also the framework versions. For example, React Vue. This is often a surprise when you normalize the used versions across all projects. So it's helpful in the end when everything is thrown into one repo and you compile it and it's not compiling if you're using TypeScript. And if you raise version numbers and if you bring every version, every framework on the same page, on the same version level, then it's always surprising that people say, how has this ever worked? So why is it working now? I have no clue. So harmonize all the versions, harmonize the used node versions, because this is often forgotten when you migrate to a MonoRepo and one project is using node 8 and the other one is using node 12, then this maybe doesn't work. So using different node versions within a MonoRepo is not the best solution. So technical foundation, what needs to be done weeks in advance? So migrating the source code is pretty easy, I think. So you have two options. With the Lerna, you have the built-in option for Lerna import, and then you give the path to the MonoRepo, and it will import everything from this repo with the complete Git history, all the commits. But I cannot recommend this because if you have a look at the Lerna source code, then it's reading all the commits into a huge array and iterating over each commit. So this will take a lot of time, a lot of RAM, and maybe will never end. So even with 16 gigabytes of RAM, it's taking literally forever. So just use Git for pulling everything into a MonoRepo, and this you can do by rewriting the old repo. Add the repo you want to import as a remote and fetch all the changes into your MonoRepo. But then you have it on the root level. So maybe it's better to shift it over to the package folder, and you can do this by modifying the Git repo you want to pull into your MonoRepo, and rewrite the file index from the Git repo. So this is a neat command here I have written, which is iterating over the files and shifting everything into the packages folder under the repo name subfolder, rewriting the Git index file, and then you can use the technique to add it as a remote to the MonoRepo and just fetch it, and then you can pull the remote master right into your MonoRepo, and this should cover everything. So the technical part of shifting code from A to B is done here. What you need to ensure is that you need to search and replace over all the imports and the requirements requires throughout your code base, so that the paths are aligned. But this should be okay in most cases. So technical foundation, the summary. Yeah, create and document the MonoRepo structure so everyone is aware of what is where to find, and rewrite and import the existing repos. Check if everything works. Document what files you maybe have dropped, renamed, what is where. Yeah, and technically you're done. It's a MonoRepo. So congratulations. But there's more. So maybe as a technical foundation, maybe you're using Git like I do. The usage of Git is within the MonoRepo is not that easy. So clone, fetch, pull needs way more time. It's a little bit sluggish, and it takes a lot of disk space. And do we have a branching concept across all the different projects? So how does this work out? And maybe you need a deep dive to to learn how all the things are working, and maybe you don't need a MonoRepo. Maybe you want to use Git subtree, or maybe you want to check out only the last 123 commits or so. So this is a Git clone depth, and then you don't check out 60,000 commits in full. So maybe you need to learn a little bit more about the usage of Git. And yeah, that said, don't forget to adjust all the existing Git hooks. You maybe have just pulled it to your code base, but you need to move it up to the root level and yeah, test it. And the risk here is that the repo is becoming unusable for your developers. So be aware. TypeScript is also a thing. It can be hell and heaven at the same time. So during development, TypeScript is very easy and supports you with typings, and and when it doesn't compile, it puts out more or less nice error messages that you maybe have missed something, and but if you, it depends on the different types of or different ways of typing. How is it a more sloppy typing in a project you have adopted, or a strict typing? In the end, maybe you need to fix all this, and so it comes that you have hundreds of errors, and you need to fix them first before you have the first successful build here. And maybe it's a good approach to unify all the tsconfig files and work with inheritance of the configuration, because you have one tsconfig file at the root level, and you can derive in the subfolders tsconfig files from this, which are extending the root level configuration. This is also a good approach. And maybe you want to, if you have typings written on your own for third-party libraries, yeah, my wish would be just hand it over to definitely typed. So make a pull request in an open source project. But if you maybe not allowed to, or if you don't want to, then maybe it's a good approach to pull it out to a separate package on your own, so you can maintain it separately from the rest of the code, and get used to fine-tune the TypeScript. The TypeScript configuration, get used with a types option in the configuration file, or the skip lib check, and all this, because this is causing a lot of time. TypeScript is shipped when you're using it out of the box in your project. Is TypeScript shipped with easy like easy settings? It works out of the box, or kind of, but when it comes to huge projects like maybe your MonoRepo is or will be, then it gets super sluggish, and you need to fine-tune the TypeScript a little bit more than you need for a package maybe with or MonoRepo with 2 or 3 packages. So make yourself familiar with how to dig deeper into the TypeScript compiling process, and maybe find other solutions, maybe decouple the type checking from the compiling or transpiling, and all this stuff. So the risk here is that you have an endless process, and you find out what needs to be done in parallel, or maybe what you need to run in a chain one after another. So I'm sure you find out. So the bottleneck here, CI. Is the CI system powerful enough? So is it able to scale up when it's needed? And if you're using, for example, the cloud infrastructure like AWS, and this might be easy to throw more power at the system. But if you're working maybe in a company where the systems are on premise, and you have limited resources, or maybe you have only a fixed infrastructure in the cloud or somewhere else, and you cannot scale up, then you need to fine tune and rethink the process, fail early, Is it well adjusted? When needs the test to be run? In which order? Maybe you need to sort which tests can be started in a very early state of the process, and which are long running and can be run in parallel or so. You need to find all this out and check against the fact base you created in a very early step, as I told you. To check if you're getting better in what you're doing or if it's getting worse. So take performance problems very, very seriously. So constantly validate against the fact base you created. Because when your CI system is reliable, like a air conditioning system in a Deutsche Bahn train, then yeah, then you have a problem during summertime, and the air conditioning is never working in Deutsche Bahn ICE. So when you have this kind of problem, and then normally one team is stuck when you have single repos, but in a monorepo, maybe the whole development department is blocked for an hour or maybe two or maybe a day. So you need to make everything work seamlessly. And also Webpack or bundlers are always a little bit strange. So every project I worked on have a different style of writing Webpack configurations. It's always the same. So someone has started to Stack Overflow a configuration which is working halfway, but what it's bundled is halfway known, halfway not, but because it's Webpack magic. And in a monorepo, you have the whole ecosystem in one repository. So you need to be very careful what is bundled, and maybe you bundle too much, then you ship code which is not maybe for the public, or maybe the artifacts are getting too big because you haven't managed the dependencies or the tree shaking of TypeScript correctly, or so have a look at the bundling system. Just boil it down to one bundler, and yeah, make a carefully crafted configuration for this so it bundles everything correctly. Yeah, the release process. Release as often as you can during a dry run or so to make it error resilient. So you have to fail fast if anything is not working that correctly. And if you're releasing multiple artifacts, then ensure that you're releasing them all at once or nothing, because a release which is only halfway distributed across some servers and the rest is somewhere blocked, and you need to dig deeper and maybe release it manually from a developer machine is not the best idea. So you can use, for example, Veraccio, which is a private registry which can be also run in Docker on your local machine, and you can run the Git release process with it. It works seamlessly, and it's very nice. And so you can download the artifact and can have a look what's in there, and is everything bundled correctly, and optimize it. And yeah, the best thing would be put the release processing completely to the CI. So you maybe have to push a tag and everything is working there, or maybe create a branch, or just push a button, or whatever works for you. But don't let developers deploy or release stuff from their machines, because in the monorepo, when you compile everything and bundle everything, it takes a lot of time. It's maybe not running in a well-formed architecture here on your local machine. Maybe some environment variables are sneaking in, and this is nothing you want here. So yeah, the risk is failing releases, duplicate version numbers. You need to omit all this stuff and need to handle with maybe wrongly maintained dependencies because, oh, I forgot to raise the version number here, and I raised the version number there manually because I need to repatch everything. And so just hand it over to the CI and let the CI system derive the version number from your code base and publish everything. If everything works, then publish it to some registries, and that's it. So another thing which is very underestimated is that maybe with a tooling you have at your fingertips, that this is not working correctly. So everyone loves their own development environment, work environment. Nobody wants to be forced to use a specific IDE or a specific tool to do things. And nothing is more frustrating than you check out a new project and you open it in your IDE and it's not working as expected. So maybe the IDE is not able to handle the sheer amount of code, and the indexing takes forever. And I'm looking here at WebStorm, which is blocking for half an hour after I checked out the project. So maybe you need to switch the IDE, or maybe you need to learn more about Git to not check out the project in full. Saying graphical Git clients. So Atlassian Source Tree was not able to handle the code base in its size. So right now they are, but maybe if you want to use graphical Git tools, then maybe check out if it's working as expected. Maybe just pick another MonoRepo like Babel, which is not that small, and have a look if it becomes sluggish and how does it feel. And I highly recommend, for example, Sublime Merge, which is also a cool tool, but you can have a look. And how does code reviews work out in your ecosystem? So when you have this sheer size of maybe you have a branch which needs to be merged and reviewed, and you have maybe 5 commits, but they are working across 1,000 files in multiple projects. Beforehand, you need to maybe have 20 merge requests and 20 projects, and you have the responsibilities of all the teams taking care of all the merge requests. Then the responsibility was clear. So maybe if you're working with GitLab or maybe with GitHub, create code ownerships or code owners, so that you have the responsibility in place, which team covers which part of the code base, so you don't forget things. Because when you expect others from how you see that there is a change in your part of the MonoRepo, your part, because the way of thinking needs to be changed, but and the other one is assuming the same from you, then maybe some files are never reviewed here. So keep your code base covered. The hardest part here, keep the teams in sync. Documentation needs to be waterproof within a MonoRepo, because every one of us has a different style of checking out a project and working with the project. And some of us maybe have worked in a MonoRepo beforehand and some not. And what I often see is that people are navigating into a subfolder of a MonoRepo to a specific package to do some stuff there and run some scripts. And normally, especially with Lerna, you don't need to do this, because you stay on the command line, you stay on the root level of the MonoRepo and handle everything from there. So it's maybe a little bit more typing, but it ensures that maybe all the pre and post scripts in the root package JSON are also run. So don't dive into or don't navigate into subfolders and punch some stuff on the command line. This may be okay for doing a yarn link somewhere, but it don't has to be this way. So yeah, keep the documentation up to date, at least the workflow part, because this is crucial when people are doing stuff in a MonoRepo and don't know how to handle things, then they will Google for stuff, and yeah, it will never be the way like you want it to be. So crucial is users needs to know where to find the documentation. This sound easy, but if I ask in my project, hey, do you know where to have a look and where to look for stuff and for information how we want to work? Is it in the wiki? Is it in the Slack channel? Or is it maybe this README file here, contributing MD in this project? Or is it the contributing MD in the other project called documentation, but this is outdated? So it's a little bit strange. So, and if you provide a separate troubleshooting document, where are the most common examples how to do things, this safe sprints, at least in the beginning. So yeah, I used to say when there's no documentation how to handle the MonoRepo, a new reality is created by Googling hacks and workarounds that find their way into the team workflows, and they will work with this workflow forever, except if you say, hey, this is not the best way, maybe try this way here, this shortcut, this is nicer. People won't do this because maybe they have added an alias somewhere in their shell also. For example, here, the X course, the parallel universe. Can you spot the difference? It's maybe a little bit hard to read because it's small text. Can you spot the difference between all these commands? So we have run Lerna directly, we have run Lerna via yarn, and we have run Lerna via yarn to execute yarn. And we have change or navigate to a subfolder and run yarn there. Yeah, the solution is they are all doing the same and they are equivalent, kind of. But you don't want to have all your teams work in multiple ways. So you have to maybe use one way. And I assume 0 here is the best approach because you have chosen to run everything with Lerna or maybe with yarn. Then this is the way to go, and not navigating around and triggering something here, triggering something there. So it needs to be one workflow. Yeah, talk to the teams. Don't hit the teams with the secret MonoRepo agenda. So keep the teams in sync, talk to them constantly, and listen to problems and take the problems seriously. So often it is when you have maybe a developer meeting and the teams are yelling, oh, we need to file this pre-release here for our component library, and this is so sluggish and it takes forever, and the process is broken, we need a new workflow. And maybe you can provide some shell scripts which cover this, or maybe a new CI workflow which cover this. So you push a tag and the pre-release is linked somewhere, and that's all. And you don't need a MonoRepo for this. So don't blame people for having questioned, especially when it comes to a MonoRepo. So MonoRepo is easy to grasp on the first glance, but once you have one and needs to work with it, and it's not that performant as you was expecting, then questions come up, and listen very carefully and have a look on how people work and how they are working with this MonoRepo thingy, and maybe you find out how to speed up things. And ask yourself more than once and constantly if a MonoRepo is really the answer or the solution for your ecosystem. So migrating code into the MonoRepo is, as you've seen, it was only 2 minutes I spoke about this. It's super easy technically, but getting stuff out of the MonoRepo and taking the hit history, not from all projects, but only for the single projects, this is not that easy. So there are tools for this, but this is another PottJS talk. And ask yourself if you're solving the right problems. and not creating new ones. I often hear, oh, we don't, why have we a monorepo here? Because we don't need a monorepo. And yes, this might be true. So monorepo was on vogue 1 or 2 years ago, and everyone wants to shift everything into a monorepo. This might be feasible, but maybe if you have a look on Git itself, on shell scripts, on maybe on other tools like Yarn workspaces or Yarn 2, then maybe you don't need a monorepo, and maybe you need only some rules for how to check out the project in which structure. And yeah, the conclusion here is, if you want to go to a monorepo, script the whole migration process. This is what takes so long, several months, but we were able to set up a CI pipeline, which is pulling 14 repositories, migrating them automatically into a monorepo, transforming the code, not only shifting the files into the packages folder, but looking to the imports, migrating all the imports, raising all the version numbers, compile everything, run all the tests, and all this other stuff. So we have scripted really everything. And so we were able to perform the migration several times during the day, at least several parts of the migration. And this was the key to have a 4-hour migration at the end of Friday. So we planned the week and to fix some or two glitches, but we don't need to, and this was wonderful. So we were finished on Friday, and on Monday everything works out of the box. So really make a gazillion dry runs and automated code migration, adjustments, testing, releasing, CI workflows, test if everything is in place, and be aware that you need to have an ongoing maintenance and performance analysis while working with the monorepo, because maybe there is not enough time to do stuff according to the workflow you have implemented. Maybe people don't know, maybe people haven't read the documentation or so, and just make sure that the monorepo is always in a good shape, because when the monorepo is blocked, maybe your whole IT department is blocked, maybe the whole company is blocked, and this is not a situation you would find yourself in. And yeah, always talk to the team. Is everything good? Does everything work as expected? Is everything fine? And yeah, and always check if you're on the correct path. Maybe before you hit the final return on the command line to kick off the migration to the monorepo, maybe you say, oh, we're raising more problems than we solve. Maybe monorepo is not the best solution. Then just cancel it. But the good thing is all the maintenance you've done in advance beforehand brings all your existing repositories in a better shape. So there's profit for all, even if you don't go to monorepo. Yes, and as I already said, you might not need a monorepo. So get used to shared scripts. Have a look at Git subtree. This is also very nice. PNPM is an alternative package manager like NPM and Yarn, but is working with linking stuff out of the box. Yarn 2 is kind of picking up. Then there is another monorepo handling tool, which is RuchJS. It's from Microsoft, and it's worth a look, really, I promise. And then there is Bazel, this build engine from Google, and there's also Bug from Facebook, which is also kind of a tool for building stuff. And freshly, or recently, so this is fresh stuff for me. I found Ultra Runner, which is a nice tool for running scripts in your monorepo with a nice UI on the terminal. So check this out. I'm uploading all the slides right after my talk. These are links, and yeah, just have a look there, and I'm glad when you support me with some feedback. And I see some questions here. So at least that's all. Yeah, I have a look at the questions. And
so first of all, thank you, Arnd, for this great talk and for the great insights. Would you like to read out the questions out loud, or should I ask the questions for you?
So the first question is, what are your shortcuts if you need to fix a critical production bug? As always, it depends. Normally, I would say have a task force, or this would be a good approach to have a task force if you have a MonoRepo combined from multiple parts who are not used to work together beforehand, before you migrate to the MonoRepo, or maybe they are distributed over several departments, countries, locations, whatever. Then have one or two people out of every team and form a kind of a bug fix task force, and let them not sit together but work together as we work together in Corona times. So so they can have a look together, and they can discuss and check how to solve this together. This is raising awareness for the other people's or other projects concerns, or maybe problems. Yeah, and let them do this together. And then, if you have a well-running CI, then you can say, hey, this is for example a bug fix branch, and then this has priority and getting more resources than the rest, or maybe all the other pipelines are paused, and hopefully no one is able to publish something to production from the command line directly. But when it runs through a CI system and you have tagged it, or the branch has a specific pattern, then it goes directly to a staging system, or maybe directly to production, depending on your use case. Yeah. So the next one, why do you take the Big Bang approach? Would a step-by-step migration be less risky? In our case, it was not able to do this because we were so much developers creating so much code, and we managed it that the product owners were able to pause the feature development on all projects for a small time frame, which we had. So we don't have to migrate all the open feature or task branches or whatever. So we work with feature and task branches at that time. But we were able to transport all the code from the branches up to the new system, and in order to don't have a really fragile migration, because we have to use all the other branches there and keep up with them, we decided to have a Big Bang approach, and yeah, it worked quite well. So it worked seamlessly. Several days afterwards, we had a huge release, so it worked. How did you calculate the cost for the management? Because the load on the systems will raise and everything gets a bit more expensive. Can I say we haven't? Because all the stuff we were doing in advance was part of more or less of our daily work. But since we spoke to all the developers, which were in our teams, that we doing the maintenance stuff all in one direction. So we helped them with aligning the version numbers, coordinated the communication a little bit. So this was more or less normal repo maintenance, and that the developers raised, for example, hey, we want to update this library, but this is causing a breaking change in our ecosystem, and then we aligned to with other teams that we mitigate the pain for the sprints or the outcome of the sprints of all the teams, because we were under big pressure, but we had this huge task we had a major refactoring planned afterwards. So it would be a huge mess if we have postponed everything and shifted code from one repository to others. So next question is, some time has passed since the migration. Do you think it was worth it? Yes, it was at that time. But as always, when you have a client and or when clients are involved, that the goal of the client chain has changed, and therefore we need to adjust huge parts of our infrastructure and split it a little bit up into kind of a micro front-end framework, and therefore we have new islands and new projects were formed, new teams, and we need to work with them. For example, with a client directly, they have a developer team on their own, which was not there beforehand, and we have other people, and we need to share our code with them. So this is not feasible within a Git monorepo or Git-based monorepo. So if you have everything in your company, fine. If you have external parties which should not be able to work on your core code base, then you need to split stuff out, and this is why we migrated more or less to or we refactored the huge monorepo into 3 parts: the application or the artifacts itself, and some packages which we want to keep, and the rest which we need to abandon. And the stuff we need to keep, we published the packages to an internal registry, took the packages and separated them as single repositories on GitHub, and we make a technical direction from GitLab to GitHub at that time. And then we can republish it from them and can compare the binaries. So we knew that the migration was successful, and then we were able to archive the old monorepo. But you have the handover exactly with the last pushed Git tag there, and you know that there is a connection between these two.